Yeah, I forgot I got to do that. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so Kyle had asked us to talk about ethics. Now, we don't normally talk about ethics. We always have to go and get trained on ethics every year. You will, I don't know if you're familiar with ethics at all, you will constantly have training classes every year for your certification, for your become CPAs. You have to take so many hours of ethics every year. So this is just kind of really a very highlighted, very overview of ethics. It's just thought to have found and thought it might be interesting to kind of just get a little definition of what it really kind of is. So with ethics, again, it's moral principles that govern a person's behavior. Ethics, examines a rational justification for our moral judgments. It says what is morally right or wrong, just or unjust. Ethics refers to those standards that impose a reasonable obligation to refrain from rape, stealing, murder, assault, slander, and fraud. And fraud is definitely one we're going to be talking a lot because that's one of the ones that if you don't have ethics or a very low standard of ethics, that's what causes frauds. Kyle's not going forward. Okay. So ethics is what guides us to tell the truth, keep our promises, or help somebody in need. It's very social-driven with ethics. There's, again, a framework of ethics underlying our lives on a daily basis. These help make decisions that create positive impacts and steer us away from unjust. Now, again, these are things that are going to make you right from wrong, doing the right thing for the wrong thing. What's better for me might be better for society as a whole, and that's when your ethics are going to come into judgment and call. Ethical behavior respects the dignity, diversity, and rights of individuals and groups of people. And that's one of the big things. Like, you heard so many things about these corporations that are unethical. Their shares drop because they commit all this fraud. And again, they're doing things that's best for them, not what's best for the business or the community as a whole. They're talking about what's the three basic factors of whether or not you're going to cheat. The first one is the benefit gained. To yourself, how much benefit do I gain from this? Is it small? If it's a small amount, you probably going to be ethical still. Am I gaining millions of this? Your ethics might be called into question on that right there. The probability of getting caught. And some of us going to jail is not really a problem. Others, there's no way we want jail at all. So if you think you're going to get caught, it's going to, again, keep you more on the ethical standard, ethical line. If you think you're going to get away with it, that's when you're going to probably be unethical. And that's what happens to a lot of our fraudsters. They start small, they get away with it, and then it's just bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually, that's how they get caught. And then the extent of the punishment. So ethics versus values versus morals. So you have the values that are a set of principles that are inherent in all individual and motives him or her work better. And again, we're all have different values based on our upbringings and our experiences. Ethics are a set of guiding values that are accepted as right from a social light perspective. Again, it's what's right or wrong in society. How does society view what I do? Do they approve of it? And that all varies from society too. Look at now all the different stuff we have going through with everything compared to, say, 20 years ago. There were different focuses in society. Morals are often personal. We can be ethical, but maybe not moral, or vice versa. Have very high morals, but be an ethical person. So it all depends on what your guiding light is. And again, ethics often more professional legal guidelines. So here's a good example I found. A lawyer has a client that committed a murder. Murder is against a lawyer's morals, but she has an ethical responsibility to defend the client to the best of her ability. So that's how you come into conflicts and that kind of little things like that. So there are 6 common personal ethics. These are integrity, selflessness, honesty, loyalty, equity and fairness, empathy and respect, and self-respect. And again, they're all more geared towards the community as a whole. So ethics in a workplace. Ethics in a workplace is defined as a moral code that guides the behavior of employees with respect to what is right and wrong in regard to conduct and decision-making. So again, it's the same overall concept, but it's more geared just looking at your business, your company, and how you're treating your company and your customers and everything else. So the business core ethics, very similar. Integrity, including exercising good judgment and professional practices, which is a CPA standard. Honesty, including truthfulness. Fidelity, including faithfulness to clients. Charity, including kindness. And responsibility, including reliability and dependability. You have a lot of corporations, they all have their guidelines, they all have their mission statements, and you'll find a lot about ethics and values into these mission statements. How do you practice ethics in a workplace? So you're going to talk about, this is when you guys are going to be challenged all the time because you're CPAs, and well, you're going to probably be CPAs, may not be, but you're always going to be challenged with little things. It's like, what do we overlook? What do we report? And so there's going to be some questionable stuff you're going to come run into, and you will, because we do it all the time as a business. It's just some things are not black and white, and they're very ethical and moral driven answers or questions. And again, it depends on how your standards are. Do you put money first, or you put your client first, or you put your company first? And there will be times you will be challenged with this stuff. Consider how professional principles and values inform your approach. Take responsibility for your actions. Act consistently with relevant regulations and law. Handle personal data, the information in a professional manner, and demonstrate honesty in dealing with others. How many times you have you're asked like make a little white lie? Some people go, well, that's a lie. Some people go, well, no, it's for the better. It's not going to hurt somebody. It's just a little white lie. Some people are very much, there's no line, it's not acceptable. So again, where do our morals and our ethics stand on? What is unethical behavior? Unethical behavior can be defined as actions that are against social norms or actions that are considered unacceptable to the public. And again, that changes. Like right now, you look at everything that's going on right now, there's a whole lot of different what's acceptable as a society now more than ever. Corporations are definitely being challenged all the time as far as being socially acceptable and doing what's best for the society as a whole. Examples of unethical behavior more for the business-wise: taking advantage of misfortunes, overbilling clients, lying, kickbacks, money on the table, mistreatment of animals, child labor, oppressing political activism. We got, was it Twitter had that little issue going on right now, about suppressing that. So what would you do? Here's a question for you. You invite a friend who works in the same industry to lunch. You spend 15 minutes talking about work-related items and an hour talking about personal items. You submit the receipt to your company as a work-related lunch for reimbursement. Is this yes or no? Is this okay, or is this not okay? Yeah. So you're at lunch, it's a business lunch, you're talking about business. Is it okay to write that expense off? How many people think yes? I'm with you, I put yes. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, so I put yes. I was tested this right here. Okay, So my book, my view is this: I had to talk about business. Yes, I'm allowed to do that. That's my code or my rules state that the whole thing has to be so much per time. Yes, I talk about business. That's my thinking. So I'm going to assume everybody else will go no then. So in this class we took, it was like 60-40. 60% of people said no, it's not right. 40% of people said it's right. So again, it all depends on how you look at things. How are you, what's your, I don't want to say compass, but, point of view. We're going to say point of view sometimes. Something it's very questionable. Is that, yes, we talked about business, but wasn't the whole meeting though? So should have taken me part of it? So these are things you're going to come across, little small things you're going to come across that stuff daily. Little question like billing, you bill a customer wrong, do you go back and correct it? So a lot of things are going to be definitely challenged or definitely going to become questionable for you throughout your whole career, your corporate career. Even if you have a personal life career, it's going to happen. So. How can we go back there and? Yeah, I'm going to just go all the way back. Let me go all the way back. I got you. No, we wanted to kind of jump into that because we didn't want to take too long, but we wanted to at least mention and get you're going to constantly be bombarded by ethics, and throughout your whole career, whatever career you're going to go through. Again, it is huge. It does guide your actions, And like I said, look at all these people who commit the frauds, all these big top executives. Obviously, they have no ethics. It's all about money. They weren't concerned about nobody else. They're trying to get their stock prices up. So there are things and pressures you're going to be doing. You're going to put in pressure. We have people caught all-time frauds. And what happens? They have money pressures. All of a sudden, this person who could be very ethical her whole life, all of a sudden, we have issues, and now it's changed a little bit. So it can ebb and flow sometimes, and how your moral outlook, how ethical you are, could be on your situation sometimes. So I want you to really just be aware of that right there.
And as Jim mentioned earlier, if you get a certification, if you're a certified public accountant, a CPA, or a certified fraud examiner, which both Jim and I are, and then Jim's also has what's CGAP?
Government auditing, professional auditing.
So all of those certifications require ethics training, and we have to have it at least once a year. So we constantly revisit that, and it's very important in our public corruption and fraud division. We want everyone that's working for us to have ethics. You know, we don't want someone cheating on their timesheet. If we want you to work at home, we want you to work at home. And, you know, we don't want somebody that's on our fraud division that's actually committing fraud. So, you know, that's just not something we would want in our division.
Yeah, because how easy is it to say, oh, you know, I needed 15 more minutes. I'll just say I worked till 4. You know, again, are you being unethical? Yes, you are, but some people are okay with that. Some people can live with that. So it depends on what your view, how high your standards are. It makes a big difference on even little small things. So we had the 5 objectives here. We want to identify the fraud triangle and fraud tree. Don't know if anybody ever heard either one of those, so we're going to talk about those. We talk about how to report fraud to the SAO and how frauds are investigated. Identify the most recent common fraud schemes and recent audits. The one we're going to talk about is City of Parma, which Kyle actually helped work on, so you can chime in there too. Identify control issues that allow frauds to occur, and we're going to identify the ethics and talk about that, which we did already. Does anybody know the fraud triangle? I'm just curious. How many people have already heard the fraud triangle already? There's a couple. Okay, wow. So the fraud triangle has 3 sides. You have financial pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. Okay? You don't need all 3 for fraud to commit. You just have to have one of those. Again, financial pressure is usually the big one. We see a lot of times city clerks. These are the ones that will have all the access to the money. Again, been doing a job 20 years. All of a sudden something happens, money gets behind, and they go ahead and I'm just going to borrow this little bit and I'll pay it back. Their thought's always I'll pay it back. Well, then they don't, and they get away with it. And then next time it happens, it gets a little bigger, and then next you know, it's spiraling out of control. Rationalization. You know, how many times if you're in a job and you're like, this job, they haven't given me a raise in 2 years, they owe me something. So you can rationalize, or I'm working really hard, and I'm working, less than he is or she is, or I'm less than my boss, that he's making all the money, So you can rationalize it to yourself. And the last one is opportunity. Again, how much do you have access to it, to the actual money? How can you do it? There's so many different accounting frauds and different ways to do it. It's kind of crazy and all that. Which that kind of brings us into the fraud tree. So the fraud tree has 3 main branches to it. The first one is corruption. In the corruption, you have conflicts of interest, bribery, economic extortion. These are so corruption is an employee misuses their influence in a business transaction in a way that violates their duty to the employer in order to gain indirect benefit. This is one you see a lot with, I'm talking about the big, I always think of, not AT&T, WorldCom, where they were having the bookkeeper fudge the books. And she kept doing it, and finally it just got to a point to where, I can't do it anymore, and then she blew the whistleblower, and all that came on down. So again, it's the screen, I've just said the screen here. So it's a median loss of $200,000. And this is, these right here were done by the ACFE, which is, what's ACFE stand for? Association.
Of Certified Fraud Examiners.
Yeah, thank you very much. They did this global study every year. It's about their last global study. So 35% of all cases were because of corruption. Then we had the financial statement fraud. Almost $1 million when you have a financial statement fraud going on. So again, more hire people up. The more higher up you are, the more that's going to be committed. And again, the bigger the medium dollars happens to turn out to be. It's a scheme in which employee intention causes a misstatement or omission of material information in the organization's financial reports. Now, CPAs, that's one of the things you guys are going to be looking for when you guys do audits of these corporations. And then we also have asset misappropriation. Okay, and there's a lot of different branches off of this particular one. Cash is one of the big ones, and there are different ways of doing the cash. So asset misappropriation, is a scheme in which an employee steals and misuses the employee's organization resources. Again, it's $125,000, so it's not as high as the other ones, but it's 83% of all cases are determined by asset misappropriation. So the bigger ones are theft of cash on hand. Again, it's a scheme perpetrator misappropriations kept cash on hand at the victim's organization. Skimming. Incoming payments is stolen from the organization before it's recorded, which is $53,000. Cash larceny is incoming payment is stolen from an organization after it has been recorded. So before, there's different rules as far as before recorded or after it's recorded. Again, $90,000 in medium loss. Then we have the next little branches that are fraudulent disbursements. You have billing schemes. Person, causes his or her employee to issue a payment by submitting invoices. We've seen that a couple of times where somebody will, again, create a company, a dummy company, and they're billing this company, but nothing's happening now, and they're just paying the money out. $100,000 medium loss of those. Payroll schemes. An employee causes his or her employee an issue with payment by making false claims for compensation. You could have ghost employees. If you're in a control position and you don't have very good internal controls, you could add a ghost employee, have them supposedly working all these hours, getting a paycheck, and it's doesn't even exist even. You could have, like I said, like we're talking about fraud, put in extra hours you didn't work, that you didn't, or even more than that. A lot of times it's not just an hour, it's going to be more than that. Or you work 8 hours, but really you only put about 3 hours worth of work in of your day. Again, same thing, it's all kind of fraud. Expense reimbursements, just kind of talked about that little one. Is that a fraud or not a fraud? It depends on how your company views it. Every company's a little different. But you have a lot of this right here. People will go and they'll supposed to submit like an itemized receipt. Well, people doing that, they'll have liquor, which are not allowed by most companies being reimbursed for, but they'll just give you a total overall bill and won't show the breakdown of itemized one. So you have a lot of employee reimbursement schemes that go on. Check tampering. Check tampering is a person who steals his or her employee's funds by intercepting, forging, or altering a check. We had one of our frauds the city clerk would make the check out to herself, but she would report it to the board that it was for somebody else. And the board never checked the bank statements to see how was the check clearing. And again, that's one of the ways, many ways that they were able to steal from the city and all. Register disbursements, make false entries on a cash register to conceal. These are cashiers, you can easily do a void, you can void a transaction, then all of a sudden now you got $30, someone's being refunded, and you take the $30, put it in your pocket. So there's a lot of different ways you can do cash register disbursements, frauds. And the last one is on I can't read it, my gosh. Inventory and all other assets. It's a $70,000 medium loss, about 19% of the cases. And again, it's employee steals and misuses non-cash assets. You have something at home or at work, stapler, pens. You kind of take to home, it's got little things, but sometimes they're bigger little things. We've had places we've found out where is this supposed to be an inventory, and kind of find out it's at one of the employees' houses they were using it. Again, it's not allowed there. So those are just some of the overall, just a little bit into the tree and to the triangle there. So I'm going to let Pam take over, and she's going to talk about our fraud division.
So the state auditor's office has a public corruption and fraud division, and I'm the supervising manager over it, and Jim is one of our senior auditors. And so we also have a hotline, which most companies do, and that is one of the top ways we get our information on when somebody's stealing, is we get a hotline call or a whistleblower complaint. And so then we go out and we investigate that complaint and we decide, is it credible or is it not? Sometimes you get somebody that's just gossiping about some small town or an ambulance district, and other times there's actually theft going on. So we have to determine which it is before we go out and start one of our audits. And so we have an email, we have an investigative process, and a hotline. And so, for example, if you guys think somebody's stealing here at MSU, you can contact us. We've audited MSU in the past. I think you all had a pretty big fraud in the bookstore many years ago. So this is something we put out there to the public because we do work for the citizens of Missouri. Our boss is elected. It's a state auditor. She's elected every 4 years. So we are, he was a she. We just switched this year. His name's Scott Fitzpatrick. And so we always have a little bit of change in our office every 4 years. If you do come to work for us, that's always something to think about. But we're going to talk to you about some recent fraud schemes that we've had. You just use the arrow. Okay. So you saw on that slide that Jim showed you from the ACFE payroll schemes. So this is kind of one of our top ones that we review. And it's mostly someone starts writing themselves extra checks, or trying to think, or they try to put money into benefit programs and then take it out. And then skimming and cash larceny. So Jim talked about, and I want you guys to remember this, skimming is before it's recorded. Cash larceny is after it's recorded. So I may give you a little test on that a little bit later. And then other assets, a lot of times we see a utility clerk will steal utility services, like your water and sewer that you pay each month. They're in charge of generating that bill for themselves. And so sometimes they just won't bill themselves, or sometimes they adjust it off. Another form of stealing assets is we've audited police departments, and they seize evidence, they seize guns, they seize drugs. Well, we've had cases where those guns and drugs come up missing, and so that's another way of stealing assets. And then misspending federal monies. You all probably know there's a lot of COVID funding that came out, a lot of restrictions on how you use that. But there was a lot of money coming out with very little guidelines, so there was kind of a lot of dipping your hand in to steal that. So we're going to talk about City of Parma. Very fond to Kyle, I'm sure. Parma is in the Boot Hill and southeast Missouri, if you all don't know where the Boot Hill is. We issued the report in July 2020, and there's a map. There's where it's located. Little bitty city, only had $411,000 coming in 1 year and 18.
700 people living in the city, that's it.
Any of you guys from southeast Missouri? Nope. Well, we do a lot of business down in the Boot Hill. I often joke that we need a satellite office down there. We received a whistleblower complaint in probably November, December of 2018. It came into our fraud division. We did our initial investigation. And in January, we sent a letter to the mayor saying, can you provide us documentation? Here's what's been alleged. Please provide us information. The mayor and the city clerk actually hand-delivered the information to our Jefferson City office. In February, we started looking at it, and it kind of looked like they had manipulated what they provided us and falsified it. We asked for more documents to try and clear that up. And around this time was the election in April. So on April 10th, a new mayor and 2 new board members were elected. And they took office. They were sworn in on April 16th. That night, the city hall and the mayor's house, former mayor who got ousted, her house was next door to city hall, burnt down. We get a call the next day that the fire had taken place and could we come down. So our investigators went down. The building was demolished. That's an actual picture of it up there on the slideshow. So they dug through, burnt records. Computers were burnt, melted, so we couldn't get any information off those. They didn't back up anywhere, not on the cloud, nowhere. And so we had a bunch of burnt records, and that is all we had going in on this audit.
When we were going back, we had to go down there, and spend about 6 hours with a flashlight in my mouth, going through the city hall, trying to find out any kind of records. And then we brought it back, and Kyle had to do a lot of records. We had to put them into scented garbage bags because the scent of the smoke was just so bad in our office. It was just like he had to. Every time he had a handle of his hands were just like this is like burnt fires. All his hands smelled like the.
My desk at the time was all the phone boxes were stacked on a table back there, and it just reeked of fire. The time you went back there, in the days our things together, I would go home just with ash on me and just smelling like those boxes in my pocket. It smells so weird. I gotta take a shower.
Things don't tell you about the
Yeah,
school.
things you're not gonna learn in the county.
Yeah, so our job is fun, but then sometimes there's aspects of it that's not so fun. And definitely, so along with the fire, because all the records were damaged, we had to issue a lot of subpoenas. We had to get records from the bank, and luckily for us, the banks worked with us pretty quickly. And some of you may not know this, but if you have a bank account, you make deposits, the bank copies everything you deposit, and they copy all of your checks, and they can reproduce all of that. So burning everything isn't really going to help you if you've stolen money, which is, fraudsters don't seem to get that. We also had to subpoena AT&T, Verizon, Green Dot. Did we send one to Walmart, or were they friendly?
We did send to Walmart. Walmart was very friendly and very helpful. The thing about Walmart was really kind of fascinating. They have everything. They store their LP division, stores everything, receives everything. They can look up in some different ways to find us information. Their stuff is pretty top notch. Getting us that information about their spending habits and what they spend stuff on.
So, with that being said, when you issue a subpoena, where it's like, we got to get it out quick, then we wait, because they have 30 days to respond. So then we sit around and wait for stuff. So there's a lot of frustration with trying to get records, because you're ready to just jump in, get a handle on what's being stolen, what's not, and you kind of have to just wait and be patient. So as I indicated earlier, there was payroll fraud. So this was another neat audit, because we had 5 different people stealing money from this city, which is unusual. We had the mayor, we had the city clerk, we had the water supervisor, we had 2 board members, and we even had a church involved in the theft. And so we had a very weird relationship going on at the city. The mayor was the daughter of the board member that was stealing. The city clerk was her best friend. She was the pastor's wife, i.e. the church, how it got pulled in. And then Mayor Byrd and her father, the board member, hired their cousin to be the water supervisor. So just a big mix. And then there was another board member. She was a professor. Sorry, Kyle, but you remember. And they were all stealing money or assets of some kind. So on our payroll fraud, we had the mayor. The payroll was $34,000 of the $115 misappropriated from the city. The mayor stole $25,000. The city clerk stole $18,000, and the water supervisor was just $1,000. We also had improper withdrawals and payments. So we had some checks we clearly knew were payroll checks, and we had other checks that were issued to the mayor, city clerk, water supervisor, and even the board member that there was no supporting documentation for. There were nice round dollar even amounts. There were just things that looked strange about them. And so that's what those improper withdrawals and payments were. And the withdrawals, obviously, is just a cash withdrawal from the bank. And that was $39,000 of the $115. The mayor stole $22,000, the city clerk $11,000, the water supervisor $5,000, and the board member $1,000. And he owned a business that the city would use to repair automobiles. So that's what that was for. Then we had $26,000 of improper purchases. And these were, it was crazy. We'll talk about this more, but Walmart, wherever, they were buying. So the city clerk's husband owned a barbecue place. So we were seeing brisket, barbecue sauce, baked beans, you name it, being bought. So a lot of these improper purchases tied to their business. We saw sofas, TVs, diapers, wigs, just everything. And if you can imagine, Kyle and Jim went through, those little bitty Walmart receipts, hundreds and hundreds of those, picking this stuff off of what's related to city business and what is not. And so very time-consuming, tedious. So you got to be very detail-oriented when you work for us. You got to be very conscientious.
You got to judge, auditor's judgment. You got to give, okay, what's the benefit of that? What's this item here? Can I see this being used, in the business or not? Again, so some of it requires judgment. Some of it was in baby formula, baby diapers. Obviously, that's not.
They didn't have any kind of program to help the youth or anything. So
I think the biggest one that we used professional I remember was the bags of candy.
right.
They would always buy like 5 pounds of candy. Well, I guess you could that in the office, but we need 5 pounds of candy.
Right. Or is there a Christmas parade? And, is the city funding the Christmas parade or Halloween, trick or treat? So we have to use our judgment on that some. So then improperly recorded utility payments. Jim alluded to this earlier, but I told you the water supervisor's the cousin. He's reading the meters. The city clerk sending out the billings. And we had theft from, this is the area we had the most, not dollar amount theft, but every single defendant. We had the mayor stealing utility services through adjustments and just not billing, and also recording payments of cash, but the cash never got deposited. The water supervisor, same thing. Her dad, the board member. Then we had the professor who also got a deal on her utilities. And then the church that I referenced to, that the city clerk's husband was the pastor of, the Byrds and the Wolfords, all the board members, all attended this church, and the church never got billed for utilities. So
one of them was on the check signer for the church. So I don't know if the church gave them money cash or what, but the church never officially paid for any of their utilities for a while.
So ethical, the church is stealing money from the city. So very, very godly there, very religious. Also, to kind of throw another kind of weird thing into this, we CaseNet everybody, or look up on CaseNet what their background is. That's something we always do. If I remember correctly, they were all having money problems. The city clerk's husband, who is the pastor, had been brought up on child molestation charges. They had foster kids in their home. So they were, he had a lot of bonds to pay for and attorney fees. We even saw a check wrote to the mayor that she said she used to bond her cousin, the water supervisor, out because he wasn't paying child support.
He had about 9 outstanding different child supports that he wasn't paying.
He had many, many children from many, many different women. So it was just kind of a fun story all the way around with this city. Kyle, you remember anything else that was kind of fun?
Well, as far as the child support goes, if you guys recall, he was billing overtime hours. He was working 60 to 70 hours every week to cover. Was compensating for the fact that the state was
Garnishing him.
Garnishing his wages, and so they were compensating for that by saying he worked overtime. And I think there was a similar situation with the mayor as well. Oh,
right.
Yeah, her overtime payments were because she was walking around reading law.
Yeah, the city clerk, yeah. The city clerk, yeah.
Well, if you're doing it, why is he getting paid overtime? It was a mess. I mean, this fraud had, you could do a case study of an entire class on this fraud. Because there was
Everything.
And I probably told you at the beginning when we were alerted to this fraud, the mayor and the city clerk brought documents into our office. Well, they falsified board meeting minutes stating that what they're paying the mayor was okay. Well, the other board members said, no, that board meeting never occurred. None of that got voted on. So we have now a falsification or what was the charge? Yes, lost my mind. Yeah, so we got another charge out of it because they falsified documents. They also would report to the board that the payments were for somebody else when they were really to them. And all the documents they provided to us were falsified at the beginning, so we couldn't rely on any of those. Then the next slide we'll talk about, and Jim, hop up here and you can talk about, is it the prepaid cards? Are we good?
We got you.
20 after.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you guys want to hear about? Do you want to hear about more about this, or do you want us to hear about another audit?
I want to hear about that. I want to talk about our office too.
Okay, we'll talk about audits another 5 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. That work?
No, 20. We only got 7 minutes.
Okay.
Well, that costs a little bit.
Oh, was it? Okay. Okay, we got 9 minutes. Okay. Yes. 4 minutes.
Okay, so another weird thing the mayor did was she'd write checks and say they were for prepaid cards, like prepaid cards you go buy at Walmart. And Jim, you want to talk about this a little bit more?
Yeah, so she would go ahead and buy these cards and say, well, we couldn't get a credit card for the city. So we'd buy these cards and then we would use that for city business. Okay, so we subpoenaed Green Dot and kind of find out, literally Green Dot has every transaction committed on these cards. And we see this cash withdrawal, we see money being spent at casinos, restaurants, nothing to do with city business. I don't think any of the money, like $16,000 were bought for Green Dot cards, and none of it was city business. So there's multiple ways you can steal. But again, this paper trail is usually always there.
Yeah, so you can subpoena just about anything. So as I said earlier, we subpoenaed everybody, it seemed like, on this because we didn't have records. On down here, we've talked a little bit about the mayor's overpayments. The city clerk's husband was paid $8,100 to clean floors. And we should have brought the picture for you, but there was no floor cleaning going on. We took pictures of this floor. All the tiles were broken up. It was just filthy, dirty. And this was not the building that got burnt. It was a different building. And so none of the board members, we also interviewed. And that is something Jim is an excellent interviewer. Can't say enough about that, but we interviewed everybody, and they pretty much threw each other under the bus, had some crazy story about everything that, we were like, oh, we got a whole another new thing to chase. And it was just crazy that sometimes when you interview people, what they will tell you. And they could have walked out at any time. But they stayed with Jim and I for 2 or 3 hours talking to us. And a lot of times I think what we find is that they want to know what we know. And so they just sit there and they tell us things that you should have lawyered up. You should not talk to us. So I think being a good interviewer, being a good listener, then being able to think on your feet and throw that next question back. Jim's excellent at it, so is Kyle.
We do a lot of, more so now the last couple of years, we do interviews, but also now we do more depositions even. So we will swear you in, and we will use your words against you in our reports. And then law enforcement will also use that too. And
law enforcement loves for us to do an interview because, the highway patrol interviews somebody, they're not going to tell them as much. We're just little auditors, and we're just doing an audit, so they'll often tell us a lot more than they'll ever tell law enforcement because they're afraid, well, they're going to arrest them. Well, Jim and I can't arrest you, but we do recorded interviews. We have recorders. We also sometimes get a court reporter. We subpoena people. We force them to appear. Sometimes people will just speak to us in a friendly way, and
I said, and most of the people, especially in small towns, they love to talk. And they will talk. And they let them go on. Like we had this one recently that we found out that we didn't know anything about this situation. We kind of find out there was like a $27,000 issue going on. And we didn't know anything about it until we talked to 2 or 3 of the former board members, and they're just talking along, and we're like, oh, really? No. So we just find out things by let them talk. They will talk to just all kinds of stuff.
And Jim's also very good about saying, so do you feel responsible for that? And they'll actually cough up and say, yeah, I do. I should probably pay that back. I'm like, you just admitted to stealing. And he did it in such a friendly way. And, it wasn't like a hard press, hard sell. And, you think that law enforcement, that you always think that they're really bearing down on somebody. But sometimes just letting people talk, just asking, so what do you think? How do you feel about that? And then they'll just open up and tell you. So that's kind of some of the fun things about our jobs. Also, a lot of hard, detailed work goes on in between the fun stuff. So we're going to sell our office to you in the last few minutes.
So if you learn one thing, if you're ever arrested, don't say anything. Okay, I'll tell you right now, just get a lawyer. I'm not saying nothing, okay? So, because I know better. Let's talk about our office. So, I know you guys will get bombarded by BKD, or not, I'm sorry, Forvis, that was going now, You guys get bombarded by them, okay? You'll make more money with them short term. Yes, I'm not going to lie about that. But you're going to work yourselves to death. You're going to work 60, 70 hours a week. We sell a quality of life, okay? We work Monday through Thursday, 4 days a week, 4 10-hour days. We have every Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. I got 14 holidays. I figured out between my schedule, my holidays, my vacation, I work about 180 days a year, okay? Quality of life. You with us, Kyle can testify to this right here, your wife has a baby, you got 12 weeks off paid before you even touch any of his leave. Again, we sell quality of life. You got student loans, you make 10 years worth of payments, the rest of your money will be forgiven debt-free or tax-free. So again, little things that add up. I pay $0 for health insurance because I'm single and not a smoker. So a lot of times people don't think about benefits. but benefits are huge. When you tack that on, you will make more money over your lifetime working for us than you will another company, unless you hit like CEO level. Okay, if you're going for big money, no. Okay. Pam's she's up to retire now. She wants to make $70,000 a year sitting at home until she dies for the rest of her life. Okay, so she would go 30 years. So she works 30 years for the state already, and she works another 30 years. She's gonna make $2.1 million just from retirement. You won't make that much money extra earning through your yearly salary. So again, something to think.
You guys aren't worrying about retirement yet.
No, you're not. But just
Fast is quick. I'm only 50. You guys probably thinking that's old, 52, but that is a very early age to retire. I could have retired 2 years ago. I keep working because I love it, and I'll sell that more than even our benefits. Is that I think if you're suited for our job, you'll love it.
Yeah.
You love what you do. You don't always get to jump in and do the fraud right off the bat, but
it changes. It's not the same thing daily. Okay, we work on different things all the time. Even in an audit, we're not working the same thing. It's not like you got to do taxes. You're doing like a regular accounting. 15th of the month tax are due, 20th of the month you got this due. It's regimented. We're not. It's always different. You can spend the first couple of years and never work on the same type of audit. You can work a school. You can work on a state job. You can work in a court case. I mean, there's so many different things that we do. So it's always interesting, and you're always learning. That's a great thing I love about my job. I've been with 6 years now, and you're still learning still. I mean, it's always exciting to come to work. I mean, it's work, don't get me wrong, I got to be golfing, but if I had to work, I love what I do. And like I said, and then we see a lot of benefits from it too. Like I said, especially you can see people go to jail. I love that part, kind of, it's not nice, but I do love it to send people to jail though, so for stealing from the counties and cities and all that. But this, again, another alternative to think about. Just something, because again, most people you don't get to hear much about us because you guys are bombarded by public, but I worked 60, 70-hour jobs before, and they're not fun. When you're young, it's okay. As you get older in life, though, you start to realize, this is not really going to be long-term for me here. So something to think about. That's all.
So we brought some pamphlets from the state auditor, and we have internships in the summer of your junior, senior year.
Right. So if I don't, I say,
if you guys want to test us out and see if you like it, that's a good opportunity.
We do have, I said, this year's internships are full, but again, things for next